The young officer saw a frail old woman on a rusty motorcycle. He sneered, ready to teach her a lesson. He had no idea the lesson was for him, and an entire army was coming to deliver it. The air in the small Pacific Northwest town tasted of damp pine and impending rain. For Colonel Eva Rostova, 82, it was the perfect scent to start a mission. For the past 50 years, discipline had been the scaffolding of her life, a structure that remained long after the uniform was hung up. Her current mission wasn't one of national security, but of personal preservation. Her prized collection of heirloom black Krim tomatoes was under threat from blight, and the only place within 100 miles that sold the specific organic fungicide she trusted was a specialty gardening shop in this very town. Her steed for this journey was a 1969 Triumph Bonneville. Its cherry red paint was faded in places, chipped along the edges of the fuel tank, and the chrome, while clean, showed the fine web of age. To the ignorant eye, it was old, perhaps even neglected. But Eva knew its soul. She had rebuilt the engine herself, twice. It rumbled beneath her with the steady, deep-throated purr of a contented panther, a sound that resonated with the unyielding rhythm of her own heart. At 82, her hands were steady on the grips, her posture straight, her senses sharpened by decades of training that time could not erode. Situational awareness was not a skill she had learned, it was a part of her being. As she approached the town's main intersection, the light turned red. She brought the Triumph to a smooth, practiced stop. It was then that the flashing blue and red lights bloomed in her rearview mirrors, staining the gray, overcast day with a sense of manufactured urgency. A patrol car had pulled in behind her. Officer Caden Michaels, 28 years old and 3 years on the force, stepped out of his cruiser with the kind of swagger that screamed ambition. He viewed every traffic stop as an audition for something bigger. He saw an old woman on a dilapidated bike, a clear public nuisance. An easy win. His partner, Officer Diaz, a man with more years and less fire in his belly, followed him out, looking vaguely weary. Well, what have we got here? Michaels began, his voice laced with a condescending cheerfulness as he approached her. He stopped a few feet away, deliberately positioning himself to look down at her. Ma'am, you do realize this is a 45-mile-per-hour zone. Your antique might have trouble keeping up. Eva remained still, her gaze fixed on the green light that had just illuminated across the intersection. Her hands didn't move from the handlebars. She had faced down interrogators in hostile territories with less arrogance than this boy was showing. Michael's smirk tightened. Her silence was insubordination. License and registration. And turn off that engine. Now. His voice shed its fake cheerfulness and took on a harder edge. One hand drifted down, coming to rest casually on the grip of his holstered firearm. Eva slowly, deliberately, reached into the worn leather jacket she wore, retrieved a small, waterproof pouch, and extracted her documents. She held them out. The Triumph continued to idle, its steady thump-thump-thump a defiant heartbeat in the tense silence. I said, turn it off, Michaels repeated, his voice louder now. It's a 69 Bonneville, Eva stated, her voice calm and even, carrying easily over the engine's rumble. It doesn't like to be shut off and restarted when it's warm. It floods. Is that so? Michaels snatched the documents from her hand. Then I guess you'll have a long wait. Because you're not going anywhere. Officer Michaels stared at the license, his eyebrows knitting together in performative suspicion. Eva Rostova. 82 years old. He looked up from the card, his eyes scanning her from her worn boots to her helmet. Don't you think you're a little past the expiration date for this sort of thing? Officer Diaz shifted his weight, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. Caden, let's just check the plates. In a minute, Diaz, Michaels snapped, cutting him off. He was in control. He walked a slow circle around the Triumph, his lip curled. Man, this thing belongs in a museum, not on the road. Look at this rust. The wiring's exposed here. This is a hazard. He tapped the fender with the toe of his boot, a petty act of disrespect. A small crowd was beginning to form on the sidewalk. A barista from the coffee shop across the street, a couple of tourists, a local hardware store owner. Phones were starting to emerge, discreetly at first, then more openly. The air filled with low murmurs. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step off the motorcycle," Michaels ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Eva swung her leg over the seat with a fluidity that betrayed her age and stood on the asphalt. She was shorter than the officer, but she held her ground with an unshakable poise, her hands clasped calmly behind her back. "Hands on the bike." "Feet apart," he commanded. The search was utterly unnecessary, a pure power play, and they both knew it. But Eva complied, placing her palms flat on the cool metal of the fuel tank. She stared at her own reflection in the side mirror, a face etched with the lines of a long, hard life, and felt a familiar, cold patience settle over her. "Where do you live, Eva?" Michaels asked as he conducted a cursory pat-down. "On a farm. Just off the old coastal highway." "Alone?" The question was sharp, loaded. "Yes." Michaels exchanged a meaningful glance with Diaz. The look was clear, "See? Confused old woman, lives alone. Classic case. Do you have any family? Anyone who checks in on you?" he continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "I have been checking in on myself for 82 years, officer." "Yes, but don't you think it's a little irresponsible to be out on a machine like this at your age?" he pressed on, warming to his theme. "Your reflexes slow down. Your vision gets worse. You could cause an accident. Hurt somebody." Across the street, inside the Daily Grind coffee shop, Maya, the owner, watched the scene unfold with a growing sense of outrage. A 30-something Air Force veteran who'd served 2 tours in logistics at Bagram, she knew a power trip when she saw one. She'd seen young lieutenants try to bully seasoned master sergeants with the same cheap tactics. She didn't know the old woman, but she recognized the quiet dignity, the ramrod-straight posture that no civilian ever truly masters. Michaels raised his voice, clearly irritated by Eva's stoic silence. "Ma'am, are you listening to me? Do you understand the danger you're putting people in?" The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. "Poor thing. Don't these cops have anything better to do? He's just trying to keep us safe," she looks confused. The world, as it always does, split between empathy and judgment. Eva finally turned her head, her gaze meeting Michael's in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were a pale, piercing blue, as clear and cold as a winter sky. "The only danger I see here, officer," she said, her voice still quiet but now honed to a razor's edge, "is a young man with a badge who is mistaking his authority for wisdom." That sentence, delivered with such surgical precision, hung in the air and shifted the entire dynamic of the confrontation. Officer Michael's face flushed a deep, angry red. The smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of fury. He had been publicly challenged. Humiliated. "That's it. You're coming with us," he declared, stepping forward. "We're taking you to the station." "On what grounds?" Eva asked, turning fully to face him. She hadn't raised her voice, yet her question seemed to silence the street. "Inappropriate behavior. Failure to cooperate with a law enforcement officer," he rattled off. He paused, then played his trump card. "And I believe you're a danger to yourself and others. You require a mandatory medical evaluation before you can even think about getting back on that thing." Across the street, Maya's blood ran cold. A forced medical evaluation? That was a line you didn't cross without serious cause. Something about the old woman's bearing, the way she stood her ground, the sheer force of her quiet defiance, clicked into place with a memory. A briefing at Lackland Air Force Base. A lecture on leadership. And a grainy, black-and-white photo on the screen of a young female officer, already a legend in the 70s for her work in special operations. The name on the slide. Rostova. Colonel Eva Rostova. The Iron Colonel. It couldn't be. But as she looked at the old woman's piercing blue eyes, the unyielding set of her jaw, Maya knew. It was her. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone from behind the counter, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't call the local police. She Googled the number for the public affairs office at Joint Base Lewis McChord, the massive military installation just 40 minutes down the highway. "Hello, this is Maya Torres," she said, her voice tight and urgent. "I'm an Air Force veteran. I need to speak with an officer on duty immediately. It's an emergency." Back on the street, the standoff had reached a critical point. "Ma'am, I'm not asking you again. Get in the vehicle," Michaels ordered, gesturing toward his cruiser. "I am not going anywhere," Eva replied, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. "This isn't a request, it's a lawful order." Michael's voice cracked with frustration. People were filming openly now. Backing down would mean losing face completely. "Based on what law, officer?" Eva pressed. "Cite the specific statute that allows you to detain a citizen for a psychiatric hold simply because you dislike their age and their mode of transportation." She had him. He hesitated, his mind scrambling for a justification that didn't exist. He was in too deep. "Elder protection protocols. Your behavior indicates you are unable to care for yourself." For the first time, a small, almost invisible smile touched Eva's lips. It was the smile of a grandmaster watching a novice blunder into a trap set 10 moves ago. Then Michaels made his final mistake. He reached out, his hand closing around Eva's arm. "You've wasted enough of my time. You're coming now." The instant his fingers touched her jacket, Eva's entire posture changed. It was a subtle shift, but absolute. Her body became rigid, her gaze locked onto his hand, and a chill emanated from her that was more intimidating than any shout. "Take your hand off me." From the other end of the phone line, Maya heard a sudden change in the military officer's tone. "Did you say the woman's name was Eva Rostova?" "Yes." "And the cop just put his hands on her?" "Ma'am," the voice on the phone became steel. "Keep your eyes on the situation. Do not let them take her. A unit is being dispatched. I repeat, a unit is on its way. Do not let them do anything to Colonel Rostova until they arrive." "Colonel." The word confirmed everything. "They'll be there in 15 minutes, the voice promised, and the line went dead. The sound came first. It wasn't the familiar wail of a siren, but a deep, guttural roar that seemed to vibrate up through the soles of their feet. It was the sound of powerful engines, and it was getting closer, fast. Everyone, the cops, the crowd, even Eva, turned to look down the highway. Sweeping around the bend was not one vehicle, but a convoy. For light armored vehicles, their angular, sand-colored hulls looking utterly alien on the quaint town street, led the procession. They moved with a disciplined speed, kicking up a spray of water from the damp road. The LAVs fanned out, creating an imposing, semicircular cordon around the scene, their heavy engines rumbling in a low growl that drowned out all other sound. Doors hissed open, and in perfect unison, 50 soldiers in full combat gear disembarked, their boots hitting the pavement with a single, thunderous thud. They formed a silent, unmoving perimeter, facing outward, their presence instantly transforming the traffic stop into a major incident zone. From the lead vehicle, an officer emerged. He was in his 40s, his uniform crisp, his movements precise. He was Captain Jacob Miller, and 22 years ago, he had been a terrified, arrogant cadet at West Point who thought he knew everything. The person who had broken him down and rebuilt him into an officer was now standing beside a cherry-red motorcycle, being harassed by a small-town cop. Captain Miller walked directly toward Eva, his eyes locked on her, completely ignoring Michaels and Diaz as if they were nothing more than street furniture. The crowd held its collective breath. He stopped exactly 3 paces in front of her. His back went ramrod straight. He snapped his hand to his brow in a salute so sharp it seemed to cut the air. "Colonel Rostova." His voice was a bark of pure, undiluted respect that echoed off the storefronts. Captain Miller reporting. We were informed you were facing some resistance. The word colonel hit the air like a flashbang grenade. Officer Michael's jaw went slack, the color draining from his face. He looked from the captain to the old woman and back again, his mind refusing to process what was happening. Officer Diaz looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Captain Miller slowly lowered his salute and turned his head, fixing his gaze on Michael's for the first time. His eyes were chips of ice. Who are you? He demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. Michaels fumbled for his composure. I'm Officer Michaels, local police. We stopped this individual because... This individual? Miller's voice rose, and as if on a single string, all 50 soldiers took one synchronized step forward. It was a subtle, instinctive gesture of solidarity for their true commander. The display of disciplined power was terrifying. Captain. I didn't know she was military, Michael stammered. You think this is about her being military? Miller took a step closer, his shadow falling over the younger man. This woman served 3 tours in places you only see in movies. She ran intelligence networks that saved hundreds of American lives. She personally trained a generation of this nation's finest officers, including myself. He pointed a finger at Michaels, his voice rising to a controlled roar. This woman, who you treated like a confused old fool, holds 2 silver stars, a Distinguished Service Cross, and a Purple Heart with 3 oak leaf clusters. Colonel Eva Rostova is a living legend in the United States Armed Forces. Men and women fly from across the country just for the chance to learn from her. He turned back to Michaels, his voice dropping again, this time filled with utter contempt. And you, officer, dared to lay your hands on her. You disrespected a decorated war hero who gave 60 years of her life to this country so that you could have the freedom to stand here and harass her on a public street. The shift in the crowd was instantaneous and absolute. The phones were still out, but now they were recording with a sense of awe, not for a spectacle of ridicule. The whispers changed. Oh my God! That officer is finished. A living legend. Michaels looked at Eva, truly looked at her for the first time, and saw not an old woman, but the towering figure the captain had just described. Ma'am. Colonel. I'm sorry, he stammered, shrinking under the weight of his colossal mistake. I didn't know. Eva's pale blue eyes met his. That, officer, she said, her voice carrying the weight of a lifetime of experience, is the entire point. You are not supposed to have to know. An hour later, in the wood-paneled office of the local police precinct, Sheriff Smith, a man whose 15-year tenure had been mostly peaceful, was on the most uncomfortable phone call of his career. Sheriff Smith, this is Captain Miller at Joint Base Lewis McChord. The voice on the other end of the line was formal, but underpinned by a current of cold fury. We need to discuss the incident this morning involving Colonel Rostova. Captain, I'm already aware, Smith said, rubbing his temples. I've spoken with officers Michaels and Lopez. I can assure you. What you can assure me of, Sheriff, is what the procedure will be moving forward, Miller cut in, dispensing with pleasantries. Smith hesitated. He'd known Caden Michaels since he was a kid. A good family. Dedicated, if overzealous. Captain, with all due respect, my officers made an error in judgment. A serious one, I grant you. But it wasn't a crime. Let me be perfectly clear, Sheriff, Miller replied. Colonel Rostova is not vindictive. She is not suing your department or seeking to end anyone's career. That is not her way. However, we, as an institution, cannot and will not tolerate our nation's veterans, let alone a hero of her stature, being treated with such profound disrespect. This is not a request. This is a matter of institutional honor. Smith understood the unspoken message. This wasn't about one traffic stop anymore. It was about political weight, institutional pressure, and consequences that could ripple far beyond his small jurisdiction. The base was a major local employer and a powerful federal entity. This was a battle he could not win. "What do you suggest, Captain?" he asked, the words tasting like surrender. "A new training program," Miller stated. "Developed in partnership with us. Your officers will spend time at our facility. They will receive mandatory training in de-escalation, unconscious bias, and professional courtesy, with a special emphasis on interacting with our veteran community. They need to understand what service to this country truly looks like, beyond a uniform." "It will be done, Captain," Smith said, defeated. A week later, Sheriff Smith gathered his entire department in the briefing room. The mood was somber. "Effective immediately," he announced, "we are implementing a new protocol for all field encounters. Every single one of you, starting with Officer Michaels, will be attending a mandatory sensitivity and respect training program at JBLM." A low murmur went through the room. Then, to everyone's surprise, Caden Michaels stood up. His face was pale, and his usual swagger was gone, replaced by a raw, humbling shame. "Sheriff, colleagues," he began, his voice unsteady. "Last week, I made a profound mistake. I failed this badge, and I failed this community. I humiliated a person who deserved nothing but the highest admiration. But in doing so, I learned something more important than any regulation in a handbook." He looked around at the faces of his fellow officers. "I learned about human dignity. Every single person we stop, every person we meet on the street, has a story. They have fought battles we know nothing about. My failure was in assuming, not asking. In judging, not listening. This new training, it shouldn't be a punishment. It's a chance for us to be better. To treat everyone, especially our elders, with the basic respect we would want for our own parents and grandparents. I was wrong. And I am sorry." A few days later, Officer Caden Michaels drove his patrol car down the old coastal highway, his heart pounding a nervous rhythm against his ribs. He turned onto the gravel driveway Eva Rostova had described. The property was simple but immaculate. A small, white-painted farmhouse with a welcoming porch, a garden bursting with vibrant, defiant color, and a 1969 Triumph Bonneville resting in the shade of a massive oak tree, looking less like a machine and more like a slumbering animal. He found her by the barn. She was dressed in grease-stained coveralls, lying on her back on a mechanic's creeper, her arms deep inside the workings of an old John Deere tractor. The sight was so at odds with the frail image he'd held in his mind that he felt a fresh wave of shame. He cleared his throat. "Colonel Rostova?" She slid out from under the tractor with a smooth motion, wiping her hands on an old rag. She looked at him, her pale blue eyes showing no anger, only a neutral curiosity. "Officer Michaels. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Ma'am. I came to talk," he stammered. "If that's all right with you." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I just put on a pot of coffee. Come inside." In the modest, clean kitchen, she poured coffee into 2 heavy ceramic mugs and motioned for him to sit at an old, scarred wooden table. The room smelled of coffee, lemon oil, and old wood. "Officer," she began, her tone that of a teacher, not an accuser. "May I ask you a question?" "Of course, ma'am." "Why did you become a police officer?" The question caught him off guard. I wanted to help people. To make a difference. And in your 3 years of service," she continued, her gaze unwavering, "how many serious accidents have you responded to that were caused by an elderly driver?" He thought about it. The endless parade of accidents caused by texting teenagers, drunk drivers, and reckless young men in sports cars. Very few, actually, he admitted quietly. Almost none. "Then why," she asked, her voice gentle but piercing, "did you assume I was the problem?" Caden had no answer. The truth was too obvious and too painful. He had judged her based on a prejudice he didn't even know he had. He looked down at his hands, ashamed. Eva stood and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at a small pasture where 2 dairy cows grazed peacefully. Respect, officer, isn't something you earn with a uniform or a rank. It's not something you grant only to people you think are important. She turned back to him. It's the baseline. It's the starting point for every human interaction. You give it freely, especially to those you don't understand, because you have no idea what mountains they have climbed or what scars they carry inside. His gaze drifted out the window to the cherry-red motorcycle. He realized she had probably been riding that bike longer than he had been alive. It still had its chips and faded paint, but it was strong, reliable, and functional. It still got her where she needed to go. It still had roads to travel. Just like Colonel Eva Rostova. And just like him, if he was willing to learn the lesson. Eva's story is a powerful reminder that heroes don't always wear capes, and wisdom doesn't always come in a fancy package. It's a lesson about the respect we owe to our elders and to every stranger whose story we don't know. What do you think about this encounter? Has anything like this ever happened to you or someone you know? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We ask that you please be respectful of everyone's experiences and opinions. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that makes you think.